Hello. Thank you for coming in and visiting with the Veterans Corner. We're very happy to have with us today our friend, past National Commander-in-Chief, Richard DeNoyer. Richard was the Commander-in-Chief for the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States of America. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you. Well, good to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it's
Jerry.
such a pleasure. You had a wonderful year when you were Commander.
Well, so I'm told. I mean, I think it was, but I don't want to brag, but it was a very enjoyable year, and I traveled all over the world and met a lot of great people,
Right.
some interesting people. Even had a chance to go to the White House and sit with the president in the Oval Office, and went to a couple of functions at the White House and was able to take my wife Teresa with me. So quite an event. Something to remember for the rest of your life.
And you spoke in front of Congress too, didn't you?
I did. I testified to Congress on veterans issues, the issues that the Veterans of Foreign Wars are very concerned with, and I think Patty Murray was the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee at the time.
Who was the president that year?
President Obama.
Oh, it was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that long ago?
No, it was 2012. So that's
Right.
a little over 4 years ago. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Boy, lots have gone on.
It has.
And where did you get to travel out of the country?
Well, let's see. I was able to go to China. That would be Beijing, Hong Kong, and also the VFW deals with a company that, unfortunately, the company produces the products that we buy from this company in China. Produces them, and this company buys, or I guess they own the company, and they actually have it produced there, and we buy the products, or they provide the products to us for our membership, to encourage people to donate and
Right.
to the organization. But also I went to Russia, Italy, France, and
Middle East? Middle East?
yes, in fact I did. I went to Afghanistan. Thank you for reminding me. I'm trying to remember all these places
I
went to.
know.
I went to Afghanistan, yep,
Wow.
and also Israel as well. I think I tried pretty much remembered all of them.
Wow.
It was yeah, pretty
Quite a-
interesting. Yeah.
What was your special project?
Actually, during our year, I'm trying to.
It was one of the national programs.
Yeah, it was one of the national programs. We don't usually pick per se a special project, but certainly veterans issues, certainly women veterans committees, Afghan, Iraq committees, things like that, supporting them, student veterans. All of these different projects are certainly at the national level, and we take it very, very seriously because we obviously want these people to become involved in our organization.
I think you gave one of the first appointments to women veterans too, didn't you?
I believe I may have, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah.
Break that glass
Yeah.
ceiling.
Hey, absolutely. You're right.
So how do you think things have changed between your year and things today in the organization?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question would be the membership. It's a very serious problem. As I went through the chairs, I think we had about 1.5, 1.4 million members. Now we're down to, we may very well go below 1.2 this year. So we're losing members at the rate of somewhere in the vicinity of 40 or 50,000 members per year.
Because of age?
Yes, we're an aging organization. Young people don't seem to be as interested as our generation was. And I suppose maybe social media has something to do with that, or we live in a different world. We don't draft anymore, which the draft, when the VFW actually gained the amount of people that it has, when the membership was at its highest, we had just gone through the Vietnam War, and of course during the Vietnam War they drafted, and maybe that has a factor. It's hard to say exactly pinpoint exactly what the problem is, but to put it in context, that young people just aren't joining as much as we wish they were. And therefore, we're losing members, and I think you can easily do the math. 20 years of losing 40 or 50,000 members, and the organization will dwindle away. So we're hoping to stop that.
Right. I feel bad because I know the World War II and the Korean veterans, they really fought long and hard to get all of the benefits
Correct.
that the younger veterans are enjoying today.
Well,
But the government likes to cut back on things.
right.
So if they don't start joining and supporting,
You're absolutely right.
you know, what'll be there for them.
Well, this is the issue. Every single benefit that veterans have was gained by veterans organizations, be it the VFW or be it some of our sister veterans organizations. Usually it's a collective effort, all veterans organizations. But veterans organizations, the GI Bill that young people are enjoying right now, which is it's the best GI Bill we've had since World War II. Vietnam veterans didn't enjoy a GI Bill quite like this one. And how did we get that? I can recall I went to Afghanistan, and some soldier I was talking with, he says, gee, it was great that Congress gave us this GI Bill. I said, do you really think it was Congress that got you the GI Bill? I said it was the veterans organizations that pressured Congress to vote in the affirmative to give you the GI Bill. So, you know, I don't know for sure if they understand how the system works, and that you have to lobby for benefits in order to get them. And if you don't, the benefits will pass you by. So.
Right, and I worked 30 years for the government, and I know how they like to cut back. So if you don't use it, it's gone.
Yep.
And if you don't support it, it's gone.
You're correct. And they cut back recently in military retiree benefits. Military retirement was 50% on 20 years. Now it's 40% for 20 years. That's a 20% cut.
Wow.
They want to cut other personnel benefits such as commissary, PX, health care. They want military people to pay more for their health care. All of these things have to be fought to stop them. We have to lobby. We have to, and the military can't lobby. They're not allowed to do that. So therefore, you have to have service organizations, veterans organizations, to do the lobbying for them. So it's not just for veterans that we lobby. It's also for the military as well.
And the families.
Exactly,
That's, you
which
know, it's all
obviously with the
inclusive.
health care, the benefits
Right.
of the families obviously have a benefit from the personnel benefits as well. Yeah,
Now, you served in Vietnam.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there seems to be a really nice surge of appreciation lately with the 50th anniversary for the
Yes.
Vietnam
Yeah.
veterans.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. The attitude has changed quite a bit, and I guess you'd have to be my age and have to have served in the military and in Vietnam at that time. I mean, I can recall, I was very blessed that I came back from Vietnam and the military picked me up to go to college. I went to college right down the street here at Bridgewater. Now it's a state university. It was a state college then. But I went there to get my degree. Of course, I was an active duty Marine at the time. But I had like a leave of absence, if you want to call it that, and I went to college full time, and I got my degree. But of course, it was I got there in 1971, and the Vietnam War was still on. It was a couple of years before it ended, and there was protest and an anti-military feeling and so forth and so on, which no one really personally came up and insulted me, but I mean, but the atmosphere was there. And they had rallies, and the cops would come in and with buses and haul these kids away for disturbing the peace or whatever was going on. But that attitude permeated this country for a period of probably the 67 or so up through 73 or 4. It was easily a 6 or 7 year period. But even after that, Vietnam veterans in our society weren't really appreciated. Even up through the 80s and the 90s. It took a long period of time, and I guess a different generation growing up to have some appreciation for the Vietnam Veteran Service. But it's pretty good today. Oftentimes I'll walk around and somebody will see my car and I have a Marine Corps decal on it or something, and they'll say, thank you for your service, or that sort of thing. And it's much appreciated. On that point, I'm going to Hawaii, and I think my wife Teresa and I are going in May and they're having a big celebration for the 50th commemoration in Hawaii. It's almost like an international type of, I guess all the veterans from the Pacific and so forth, or the mainland
Wow.
for that matter,
Wow.
are invited. It's quite a big deal. And we're going to spend some time over there, a couple of weeks, and participate in that. So that's something that's anticipated. We're looking
Right.
forward. Yeah.
In this town, actually, we have planned coming up this weekend one of the welcome home ceremonies for the Vietnam veterans. And I had one fellow that wasn't going to be able to be there, so I actually gave him his pin last week. And it was funny. He's a very quiet fellow, served in Vietnam. And I said, could you just stand up? We were at the Elks. And I said, on behalf of the United States government, I'm presenting you with this pin in appreciation for your service. I thought he was going to cry.
Yeah.
And he was there for another hour or so, and I put it on his lapel, and he sat there the whole time with his hand on that pin. It just really, really means so much to them.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait for us to have the ceremony this
Yeah,
weekend.
I mean, I've traveled all over the world, and I've met a lot of people, and I've been very blessed. But a lot of guys just came home from Vietnam, and they went on with their lives, and they didn't have the privilege that I've had of traveling and meeting people and so forth. But something like that really resonates with them, and it means a great deal.
It
There's
does.
no question. Yeah.
So what do you see going forward with what's going on with the war today? And people seem to forget we are actually at war.
Yes, well, we are, but it doesn't affect their lives, and
I know.
therefore they don't really feel it. But how we can stop the war on terrorism is debatable. I mean, you get different opinions from different people what we should or shouldn't be doing. I think there's been mistakes made. I think that obviously taking all the troops out of Iraq, I think almost anybody that has any expertise in military tactics and so forth would say that that was a big mistake. It gave the ISIS a chance to form and grow. And of course, this mess in Syria, there's children, women and children that are being killed and tortured, and Christians. You talk about, when we bring up religion, oftentimes we forget that Christians are being persecuted as well. And how do we stop that? Well, I think that probably, I'm far be it from me, I was not a general in the military, so I'm not an expert, but I do think it has to be a co-effort of many nations. It can't be just the United States constantly taking the load, the
Right.
complete load. I think we need to have how about some of the Arab countries that want to stop this? Why don't they join us and get involved as well? I mean, if we had a joint effort of nations, I think that we probably would be completely successful in curbing the terror that's going on over there right now with ISIS and so forth.
Yeah, I just feel so bad we've lost too many of our own
Yep.
young men and women, and
Yep.
enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I think, today is really the first day after a very historic upset election.
Correct.
And
Yep.
it'll be interesting to
Yeah.
see what happens going forward
Yeah.
there. There were a lot of statements made, a lot of,
Right.
I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Well, we'll see.
Well, I don't mean to be partisan, and I know this is not a partisan show, but
Right.
this administration has not been able to control ISIS, and I don't think they've made the correct choices that maybe should be made. That's my opinion.
Right. I agree.
And hopefully this next administration that goes in will do a better job. Well, that remains to be seen, of
Well,
course.
I think we're in for a heck of a
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen overnight, so we'll see.
yeah.
Give them a chance.
Yeah.
So what would you like to, any information you'd like to get out to the veterans in the community and their families?
Certainly, I have some concerns. The suicide rate among veterans it disturbs me greatly. We are the greatest nation on earth. And we have
Yes.
the best veterans programs probably than any other nation in the world. They have some problems. Things need to be changed, corrected. But why is it that we can't deal with this problem of 22 veterans per day? And they're not just Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. It covers the whole gamut of Korea, Vietnam, and so forth. And I read recently that many of them don't have. Initially, you think that they have PTSD and that they've been in combat, and this is but it's not. Most of them don't have PTSD. Most of them weren't necessarily in Iraq or Afghanistan. And ironically, most of them that do, they say that if a veteran is involved in the VA system, the chances of him committing suicide is much reduced. So I assume to understand that, I assume that they mean that he would be in psychiatric care within the VA, and therefore he'd be getting the help that he needs. So why is it that we can't advertise, or we can't encourage more veterans that are having these psychiatric problems to get into the VA system and seek help rather than taking their own life? It's an American tragedy, really. It really is. And also, we have some problems in the VA. It seems that most of it's at the upper management level, not the lower, not the nurses and the doctors, the bureaucrats at the top. That certainly needs to be straightened out. I know there are
definitely top heavy.
Yeah, and the idea of veterans waiting 6 months, 9 months, a year, or more for an appointment is absolutely ridiculous. And they've even said that some of them have died while they've been waiting to get into, and would they have still died if they got in? I don't know. But the idea of them having to wait when they're that sick is ridiculous, and something needs to be done about it.
I think that with this here, Iraq and Afghanistan, it used to be you'd go off, you get drafted, you'd go off to war, you'd be gone maybe a year, you come back, and you go on with your life. Some of these kids are deployed 5, 6 times.
No, you're absolutely correct, and I can speak from personal experience. I went to Vietnam. I was gone for 13 months, and I got married 9 days before I went to Vietnam. So of course it wasn't necessarily. I wouldn't say I volunteered to go to Vietnam, but I was a career Marine. I'd already re-enlisted, and therefore that was my job, so I had to go. I came back from Vietnam, and normally in those days you'd have about 2 years in the States before you would have to go back for a second tour. And sometimes you wouldn't even go back for a second tour if you had a tour of duty that circumvented that. And so today, you're right. I mean, they may go for 6 months, but then they come home, and then 6 months later they're gone again. And in a period of, say, 2 years, they may be deployed 2 or 3 times during that 2-year period.
So every time they come home and try to get their life on track,
before you know it, they're back. Yeah.
Right, they lose their jobs, they lose their wives, their families.
And I think some of the reason for that probably is that we don't draft. When you have the luxury of saying, "Hey, we want you," they need more people. We'll just get them.
Right.
But they're limited as to how many people they can get, because people have to join, even in the reserves, and they have used the reserves, but you've got to get people to join the reserves. You have to have people to volunteer to go into the military. It's a volunteer armed forces. So I think that obviously makes a difference in situations such as this, that they don't have the luxury of just forcing people to go in the military and then go off to war. People have to volunteer to do it. And, but I am a supporter of the volunteer armed forces. I think it's the correct way to do it. I think people should want to be there, not be forced to be there. Unless of course, we have another World War II or something, then obviously we'll have to go back to the drawing board and take a look at it again if we had something like that would happen. But the type of wars that we're involved in now, I think a volunteer armed forces, with a little bit of effort, they can probably handle the issue.
And I've heard, back in the past few years, a lot of the veterans didn't want to go to the VA because they didn't want PTSD or any mental health issues on their record, so that it would affect them if they were applying for a job. And that's why the vet centers became more active. And that's a really great outlet for them.
You're absolutely correct. And I will tell you that I spent a career of over 20 years in veteran services, and I actually handled claims, assisted claims for a lot of veterans with PTSD, and I used the vet center all the time. I actually got very familiar with a lot of the people there, and I knew them very well, and I would just refer my claimant to them and they would, do the screening and all of that sort of thing, and evaluate that individual's condition and so forth.
Yeah.
Worked out very well.
And actually, I'm talking to, oh, I forget who it was, but a veteran, or actually, I think it was a veteran's agent, not the one in our town, but a lot of the veterans don't even want to admit that they were in the service because they'll be labeled as having PTSD or mental health issues.
Yeah,
And that's pretty sad.
Well, it is, because everybody that goes in the military obviously does not come back with PTSD.
Right.
Most people that do are in the infantry. They're in heavy combat, and even all of them don't necessarily come back. And I read a statistic somewhere of how many, what the percentage is, and I'm not going to quote it because I'm not. I don't think I remember it. But surprisingly, it was lower, a lot lower than I thought it was, of the percentage of veterans that leave the military with PTSD. It's not as high as people might think.
Right.
And you're right. And no one should be. I mean, if someone serves their country, I don't think they should be labeled with anything. I think that you ought to wait and see if there is a problem.
Right.
And I'm not sure that people in the military have any more problems than the civilian sector, for that
Right.
matter. Quite frankly.
That's true. There's plenty of mental illness out there, shall we say.
Yeah.
But, so what else would you, tell us a little bit about your service. So you had 30 years?
I was in for 22.
Wow.
Actually, I joined the Marine Corps in 1960, so that's 50, actually the 15th of this month, it'll be 56 years ago. I joined in November 15. And today is the 9th, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so
Next week?
6 days. It'll
Yeah.
be my 56th anniversary. I was 17 and a half to be exact. And I got bored with school and bored with these part-time jobs that were going nowhere, and I was wondering what future I had. So I said, I'll go in the military. And in those days, almost everyone went in the military. There were some that escaped it, but many people did, my generation, probably most. And they were either drafted or they went ahead and joined and picked the one they wanted before they were drafted.
Right.
Which is my case. I picked the one that I wanted, and I went in the Marine Corps, and it fit. For me, it fit. I enjoyed it. I liked the regimentation. I liked the discipline. I liked the challenge. So I stayed for 22 years, and
Wow.
during that period, I finished my education, high school, got a college degree, and I got out an officer. I retired as a lieutenant. So it was very, very good to me. And for 56 years, I should say, excuse me, for 30, I retired in 1982. So for 34 years, I've been drawing a military retirement. It's been very, very good to me.
awesome. Yeah.
Very, very good to me, yeah. And consequently, that's how I got into veterans benefits. And I actually started working at veterans benefits in 1984, a year or two after I got out of the military. And completely, well, if you want to count the VFW, I spent a career in the Paralyzed Veterans of America for about 17 years, but along with that, I was involved in the VFW. So when I retired from working with the Paralyzed Veterans, I started running for national office, and so I spent probably about over 30 years.
Most of your life.
Yeah, in veteran services and the VFW, the political part of it, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
And you were blessed with a lovely wife that
Yeah, she's sitting right over there.
actually put up
Our
with
viewers
all of
can't
this.
see her, but she's
Right.
and she's probably saying, "Don't you dare call me over here."
Yeah, right. We had that little voice. Right. Yeah, it's been great. And
Yeah.
actually, you were a wonderful representative when you were national
Well,
commander.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I took it very seriously, and I'd like to say that whatever I did right, I probably learned it while I was in the military. The military teaches us some good things.
Yeah.
And I hope that I learned them well. But it certainly, what I did learn, it served me pretty well while I was representing the VFW. Thank you.
And are you active? I know you're still active in the VFW, but are you holding any kind of a position
No,
at
actually,
this time?
I'm pretty much retired, and you know, if somebody like Jerry Rumsis had asked me to come down here and do this, I'll say sure, why not? Or somebody will ask me to be a keynote speaker at a banquet or something, and I'll do that.
Yeah.
I still go to some of the meetings, the state meetings, the national meetings, and that sort of thing. But I kind of like retirement, and it's nice to be able to pick and choose what you want to do and when you want to do it, and you know, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So and I have grandchildren. I have children and grandchildren, of course, and I spend a lot of time with them, family, and that sort of thing. But life is good, and I guess I'm kind of just enjoying my fruits of my labor, I guess.
Exactly, and you certainly did earn it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And thank you so much
Oh, it's
for
great
being
being here. Thank you.
Maybe we'll
I
have you
enjoyed it.
back again.
Thanks.
Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I hope that you've enjoyed the program, and we look forward to bringing you another wonderful, interesting guest.